The Way of Will John.
My friends, we are 1 year away from the World Cup in Qatar. Now, we did a breakdown of the allegations, the scandals, the bribes, the deaths, okay, in another podcast. So if you have not seen that, check out part 1 because we have developments. We have spies. We have the CIA. We have another scandal, this time not by Qatar, by a Western nation. I don't want to say that it was being covered up. Let's just say it's not being talked about very much. I don't remember that headline. So let's get you caught up to speed if you don't know what's going on.
It's a big deal if any country wins the World Cup. This is the planet's most popular sporting tournament. You know, billions of eyeballs watching.
Now, putting all that stuff aside, there were calls to boycott the World Cup, and you just can't see it happening. I'm not saying that it shouldn't happen. That was the conclusion that we kind of came to the last time. I'm not saying that it shouldn't happen. The question that we cannot figure out is, who is this going to benefit? So you're probably wondering, how do we do all the cool stuff that we do on Biscuits and Tea and Way of Will John podcast? We use MANYCAM. That's right. MANYCAM is an app program that allows users to use their webcam with tons of different video chat and video streaming applications simultaneously. It's obviously accessible to Windows and Mac computers, and users can, of course, add live graphic effects and filters to their video feeds. As you can see, we do it big here with Biscuits and Tea and Way of Will John. So if you yourself are looking for a simple solution to add some cool stuff to streaming or any of your video effects, MANYCAM is your solution. Back to the podcast. When you're calling for a boycott of the World Cup, you are literally calling for the biggest boycott in the history of the world. I mean, I don't even know what the biggest boycott ever was. Let's check that out. Hold on. But when you're talking about a worldwide global event, which is the most watched, most participated event on the planet, by far, doesn't compare to anything else, it's a little hard to come to consensus on whether or not that's the best thing to do. So, what happened since then? What happened since the time that we covered it last time?
There's been questions raised about Qatar's use of foreign workers to build the infrastructure.
Along with everything else, we now have the CIA, or an ex-CIA officer, digging his fingers into the pot.
𝗪𝗛𝗟𝗟 is a former CIA officer who went to work for the Qataris in 2010 when they were bidding on the World Cup. And our investigation has found that some of the work he did for them was to basic spy work on some of the rival bid teams, as well as FIFA officials. And then after they won the Cup, he continued to work for them as questions were raised about how they won the Cup, and there were threats and efforts to maybe take the Cup away. Our investigation found that some of the techniques that 𝗪𝗟𝗟 discussed using included setting up a fake Facebook profile of an attractive young woman to try and get a target to talk to them.
So now we have a former CIA officer using honeypots. And a honeypot, of course, if you do not know the definition, is a spy, typically an attractive female, who uses sex to trap and blackmail a target. One wonders what kind of information was used or gained and what one tries to get off of a honeypot. Who is this director targeting? That would be my question.
There's a legislation advancing in Congress right now that would require more reporting about what former U.S. Intelligence officials, former CIA agents, what they're up to when it comes to working for foreign governments.
Actually, kind of interesting to think that there's a problem with the amount of former CIA directors. I mean, they're essentially mercenaries. Now, if you are paying attention, if you've been a fan of The Way of Will John for a little while, you guys know that we had a former mercenary on the podcast talk about what's going on and how this works. And essentially, I mean, mercenaries are literally just up for sale. It's not that expensive. I mean, no, it's not going to cost you $20 to go get a guy. Could you imagine? Do you guys think that there's what's an app for that? Could you imagine an app for mercenaries? Is there an app for mercenaries? I'm not Googling it because I'm not going to end up on that list. Okay? You can Google it and then put it down in the comments section if you dare. Kevin Barry would do it. You don't know Kevin Barry? Well, Kevin Barry would do it. So it's a little troubling to think that the U.S. government doesn't have any idea what's happening with their intelligence officials once they're done working for them. I don't know how much of that I can actually believe. The fact of the matter is, though, these guys want to work. And when they want to work, they work. And they do not cooperate with governments because you cannot get paid otherwise. So it's very well possible that these guys are just looking for work, just looking to make a buck. I just want to turn back real quick to the boycott, though. There are people with interesting ideas on what they could do in order to promote the idea of equality, of the boycott, what they really want to do. So have a listen.
But the controversies have led these fans in Europe to boycott the tournament. They're planning their own amateur version instead.
We don't want to have any part of it. That's not what sports should be about. So we thought, let's organize our own tournament over the same 4 weeks.
I'm not, I am a fan of the amateur game. I'm a fan of everybody getting involved and stuff like that. Just the idea of a bunch of people deciding, you know what? We're going to boycott the World Cup. What are you going to do about it? We're going to start our own World Cup. I love it. You got to applaud the ambition of these dudes. At the same time, no. Nobody is going to watch your backyard World Cup. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I think that's just a thing. That's just a fact. I mean, if we wanted to boycott any massive entity and you just decided, I'm going to start another one, the problem is the great resources. This is a problem that is outside of the sport. All right. It has something to do with the nature of society, the way corruption, bribes, scandals, the way money is involved in sport, the sponsors and all that stuff. It's not a question of morality anymore. It's just not. I'm going to venture to say that you probably know about the allegations that Russia bought the 2018 World Cup. And you definitely know about Qatar allegedly buying the 2022 World Cup because everybody on earth has heard about it. However, are you aware that Der Spiegel pretty much confirms that Germany bought the 2006 World Cup? No? Let's take a deep dive. The Spiegel International article goes on to state, in what could turn out to be the greatest crisis in German football since the Bundesliga bribery scandal of the 70s, also didn't hear about that, Spiegel has learned that the decision to award the 2006 World Cup to Germany was likely bought in the form of bribes. The German bidding committee set up a slush fund that was filled secretly by then Adidas CEO Robert Louis Dreyfus to the tune of 10.3 million Swiss francs, which at the time was worth 13 million Deutsche Marks, which at the time was worth a lot of money. It appears that both Franz Beckenbauer, the German football hero who headed the bidding committee, and Wolfgang Niebusch, who was the head of the German Football Federation at the time, both were aware of the fund by 2005 at the latest. If you want to blame Qatar, you have to at least go back and understand the environment, their behaviors, and whether or not this was the status quo. Because it appears that Qatar's actions are actually a symptom of an overarching issue within corruption within not just FIFA, but possibly in sport in general, and maybe even just humans. Now, I'm not absolving Qatar of their sins. It's very clear that they could do something about this. No one is doubting that. But it is funny that there was no talk of a boycott in 2006. There was no talk of a boycott in 2018. There was none in 2014. There's always going to be some issues and stuff like that. Most likely, the truth is that Qatar has been known to infringe on these sort of things for quite some time, and it's kind of like this open secret. We all just kind of know it happens. But the same could be said for corruption and bribery in sport. I have seen it. I have experienced, played against teams that are known to do match fixing and things like this. And of course, it's just one of those things that's there. Boycotting Qatar seems to me almost like breaking your arm and then putting a Band-Aid on it. It's not really going to fix the problem. Within a week, you're still going to have the same issue, just in another place. You know, this reminds me so much of the Lance Armstrong saga, because it was clear that doping was prevalent throughout the entire cycling community. And Lance decided to do it because that was the only way to keep up. In the same sense, if you won a World Cup, it's very unlikely, it appears, that you don't have to buy it. I mean, is stuff going to start coming out about the 2026 World Cup in USA and Mexico and Canada? Maybe. Maybe not. I don't know. I'm sure someone will start it. In the end, we all have a question to ask ourselves, which is, what are we going to do? Now, you remember our friends who started the Amateur World Cup there in Germany? You see, part of the problem is that UEFA itself has also been accused of engaging in these sort of shenanigans. And they thought it might be a good idea to do a little boycott. So what happened?
Gemerkt, da meinen wir auch so, hier, das können wir uns nicht geben, die UEFA, auch irgendwie kein Verband, den wir unterstützen wollen. Aber es wurde dann im Laufe des Turniers wurden immer mehr Spiele, die man dann gesehen hat, oder immer mehr so, ah ja, heute noch das Halbfinale, wollen wir das schauen, dann auch das und das machen. Und
easier said than done, but don't worry, we'll check in 6 months just to see if anyone solved the issue of human corruption and greed. My name's Will John. This was 11th Commandment News with, no, it's not. Just subscribe. All right, cool. Thanks. See ya.